Hi everybody, today I'm going to show you how to make the Gladstone bag. There's been so many requests to have this done and for me to show you all how to do it. So I'm going to run through it initially to show you all the bits and pieces that you need. First of all, you get the actual clasp itself with full instructions and the pattern pieces. And I need to talk you through those pieces as well. Once you get it out of the packaging, you've got the actual clasp itself, which is really strong, gorgeous. Love the shape of this bag actually. Then you need to cut the pattern pieces out. Now the lining and the outside and the wadding, they're all the same size pattern piece. So this is the pattern piece for the outside, for the actual main part of the fabric. And I've got my little piece of pipe in there, and it shows you where to place the bag handles here and here, all the pockets, and also tells you about how to put it on the straight grain of the fabrics, in other words following the direction or the warp of the fabric if that's how you want it to be. So you need to have actually 3 of those shapes, so you need 2 in wadding, 2 in lining and 2 in the outer fabric. Then you need to cut 2 of the pocket pieces, so 1 for the outside, 1 for the lining. In the bag I'm going to make today, it's in contrasting fabric, but that's entirely up to you whether you want it to stand out or not. Now I'm going to use wadding on my front pocket. I'm going to quilt mine. That's entirely up to you whether you do that or not, but it doesn't say that in the pattern, by the way. So again, lining and outside fabric. Then you've got the frame cover. You need to cut 4 of those. Now that is the part that's ruched up when it goes through the metal of the actual clasp itself. Now actually this is the perfect size for the handles too. We left the pattern off for the handle because we didn't know whether you wanted short, medium or long handles, but actually I found that the frame cover is the perfect size for the handle too. So cut 4 of your fabric, either in a contrast or matching your outside fabric, and then you need to cut 2 for the handles. And we're going to put a foam stabiliser in the middle of the handles to make those nice and soft and firm. So those are your pattern pieces. So here we go, I'll show you what I've done and then I'll crack on. So with my main fabric I'm using a lightweight, like a chambray denim. You can use whatever you like. So this is my outside fabric and I've cut 2 of those. Then I've cut the frame cover, and actually I'm going to be using a really nice dotty fabric to match the outside fabric. Then I've cut 2 of the pockets, and again I'm using the dotty fabric so it stands out. And the piece where I'm going to put the piping, I'm actually using a little scrap from the main fabric panels as well. I've cut my wadding to size, and just for fun I've actually cut my lining out of bright pink. Let's put it the right way around. Okay, bright pink, and actually this is the tea towel. You know I love using my tea towels for my lining because it's such good quality. So really bright pink lining. Now that's the 2 reasons for that. Firstly, it cheers me up. Secondly, it means that when you open the bag up, because it's bright, you can see absolutely everything inside. If you use dark lining, sometimes things get lost in there because it's dark. So now I'm just going to crack on and create the bag. Here we are with the 2 front pockets. This is the outside and the inside, and I've already quilted one. This is the little strip of waste of the main fabric and my piece of piping, which is just over 6 inches long. Now I've put my zipper foot on the machine, and I'm just going to all I'm doing is actually just pinching those fabrics together and holding that piping in place. I'm just going to machine, not so near the piping, a little bit away from it, just all the way down to the bottom, and there we are, done. So the next thing to do is just to trim off those ends, keep everything nice and neat. If you want to press at this stage you can, but there's really no need. So now we need to do is sandwich this piping in between the layers, and all I'm going to do then is just fix that first in place. Again, I'm not going so near the piping. I shall do that when I actually piece all the 3 pieces together. So it's just attaching it so it's easier for me to sew as we go round. So there we go. So now I'm just going to trim those edges off again. So keep trimming and cutting. There's so many bits of threads to cut off as you go with all of these designs. So now we're putting right sides together, and my lining is the same fabric as the outer fabric. You could use a plain cotton fabric, if you want to a piece of waste, you're not going to see that lining. And all we're going to do now is I'm just going to get my quilting clips out, and I'm just going to attach 3 of those edges together. Now I'm actually attaching the 2 sides and the top where the piping is, so I'm leaving the bottom open, and you'll realise as we go along why that is. So you can see now I've just clipped those 3 edges together. I'm just going along the 2 sides, along the top and down the bottom. And again, I've kept my zipper foot on there because I'm going to go even nearer now to the piping as I get around to the top there. So just whiz around there. I'm using about 1/4 inch. I'm not measuring this, but it's pretty much the same on all of the bag. It's just about 1/4 inch or thereabouts. I shouldn't get too worried about that. If you keep your seams consistently the same, then it really won't matter. And this is a sort of standalone pocket, so it absolutely doesn't matter what your seam allowance is. So there we are. So just take that off the machine. I'm just going to trim it, just take some of that fleece off the top edge there, take the corners off, and that always makes it nice and easy for turning. Just trim that down, and then we'll turn it right side out and give it a good press. So again, if you've got a nice blunt big knitting needle, I find a 12mm needle to be the perfect size for pushing through. I didn't have that in my kitchen, so I'm just using the blunt end of my scissors just to poke those corners out. And they won't be a perfect corner because you've got that binding in there, that piping. It will be a rounded corner, so just bear that in mind, that when you come to press, don't expect a sharp corner there because you've got that piping. So all I'm doing there is pressing this little pocket there so it's nice and neat. I always press as I go, pretty much everything. It does make a difference. So just move that further in so you can see all I'm doing is pressing. Nothing spectacular, just making sure that's lovely and neat. It actually helps with the top stitching if you have pressed all the layers nicely. And it means that you don't have to press it when the whole bag is finished, and I have to say, once it is finished, it would be more difficult to press those bits and pieces really nicely. So the next thing then is to actually just turn that those edges, those raw edges that we've got under 1/4 inch, so we'll do that in a sec. So just showing you now on the pattern piece, and hopefully you'll be able to see this okay. On the pattern pieces, you remember the 2 crosses that I showed you right at the beginning of the video, there and there. Well, that's either your pocket position, can you see it's just a little bit narrower, not much, 1/4 inch, or your if you don't put the pocket on, then that could be where your straps go. So all I'm doing here is I'm folding that pattern piece down, and I'm just about going where that cross is there. So I'm using my heat erasable pen just to mark that cross, which will show exactly where I can place the pocket. And like I say, you can use that back and front to place your straps, and it just makes it super easy. And then also just to remind you, I've used my stick and spray on the back of the pattern piece, and then it becomes slightly tacky and it sticks really nicely to your fabric to allow you to transfer those markings really well. So there we go. I'm just turning in about 1/4 inch thereabouts on my pocket at the bottom there, and rather than place that straight down onto the front of my bag, I'm just going to top stitch that opening closed and then I'll top stitch again as I go round and attach it to my bag. So you could put another one of these on the other side of your bag, and you could even put one of these on the lining of your bag as well. So there's lots of different possibilities of how you use this pocket pattern. And once you make 1 or 2, especially with the piping, it really looks really nice. You'll be encouraged to do a lot more, I'm sure. So there we are, just placing it down. Now I can see the little marks that I've made with my pen, so I'm just pinning that in place just to hold it down, ready for top stitching. and just popping that under the machine. I've put my regular foot back on again, so I just did that in between the video there, just to make sure we've got the right foot on there. So I have swapped over from my zipper foot to my regular foot. And don't forget also to do a really good back stitch at the top of both sides of that pocket, because you might well be putting lots of bits and pieces in that pocket and it needs to be super strong. So just a few back stitches there, and you'll see me do that just now, just to finish that little bit of stitching off. So just do your little bit of back stitching and come round. And if you want to do, remember the little triangles you can do on bags as well, just to give your bag stability, the pocket rather stability, then it's a good time to do it. So there we are, so there's the pocket in place, and you can see that I've actually quilted the wadding to the pocket and the outside of the bag. So there's the strap made up. Now my straps are the same size as the cover for the frame, and I've cut a piece of foam on a roll, which is, I've actually cut it down to 1 inch or 3/4 of an inch, or 1 inch is absolutely fine, and I've just encased that into that piece of main fabric. And all I do to start off with, I turn over each narrow end 1/4 of an inch, top stitch it, and then pop the foam inside, wrap it round and stitch it down. And I always do a double row stitching because it looks really attractive. And then about 1/4 of an inch away from your pocket, and 2 inches down, I then place my straps. So each side from the top of the bag down to the bottom of the strap is 2 inches, which I find to be absolutely perfect. And all I'm going to do now is actually do a little rectangle of the ends of the straps, just to hold those in place. And you can do the little crisscross in between if you want to. So there's front and back now, complete with their straps and pockets. You can see the outline of the pockets and the straps there. So we're just going to stitch along the 2 sides and right across the bottom of that main bag, about 1/4 of an inch again. And because I've actually quilted that wadding in place, everything holds together really nicely. So I'm using my quilting clips, so I'm not going to do those corner pieces. I'm just going to do the 2 short sides and straight along the bottom there. And as I say, about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I love using my quilting clips because I find with the quilting pins they are super strong and sharp, and oftentimes I've caught myself on them, so the quilting clips are a good safe option, worth investing in if you haven't got any already. So just about 1/4 of an inch then from the sides, just to go around, and if your edges don't meet up 100%, please don't worry about it. This will not be seen once you turn that bag inside out, and all will be fine. It will look absolutely gorgeous. I'm really pleased with how this bag turned out. I've had a lot of compliments about it, and I'm sure you'll get lots of compliments about your bag when you make it too. So there we are, so we've gone all round 3 sides, again lots of snipping of threads. Goodness me, with all the quilting as well, there were so many threads everywhere, honestly, it's just a nightmare. So there we go, all done. So now all we need to do is the lining. Now the lining is just gorgeous. Now this is a really good quality tea towel, and it really is a super fabric. Our linen look fabric is very similar to the quality. So now we're just going to make those box corners. So you can see I'm just pulling out those little V's there, and now I'm just going to stitch right across the bottom. And this gives that lovely flat bottom effect, and also gives you a nice bit of width and depth in your bag. It really makes the look very professional. So we're just going to stitch about 1/4 of an inch again across the bottom of those little box corners there. And some people call this bagging out. If you've heard that expression, that's what that is. Or it's a sugar bag corner as well, that's what they call it. There's lots of different ways, people call it all sorts of different things. But basically what you're doing is allowing that flat bottom to be put in place. Now if you wanted to, you could put a firmer gusset inside your bag to make that even a sharper flat bottom if you want to. It's entirely up to you. Once you've made 1 or 2 of these, you'll make loads. So there we are, that's how it looks like on the lining. Now if you'll notice, I've not left any gaps there for turning, and it'll become more obvious why as we go through. So just do exactly what I've done with the main bag, as in the lining. In other words, I've gone around the two sides and the bottom. So now I'm doing the box corners for the main fabric. So both pieces are identical, and you can see how really quick and easy it is to actually create this really lovely bag. And I have to say, it holds a lot. It's amazing how much it holds. I'll be interesting to see when you've made yours, if you can send me some pictures. And I'll also be interested to see what this would look like and feel like if we use the foam stabiliser instead of the wadding, because that would give it a huge amount of rigidity. So that would be, I think that would be a fun thing to do. I might do that one next actually. So there we go. So we're just bagging out those, the bottom of the bag there on the main fabric. You can see how I've quilted it there too. All holds it nicely together and gives a professional finish. So again, there we go, it gives it that lovely finish. So here we go. So this is the bag almost complete now. We're not far off completion, we've just got to put the clasp covers on as well. So now we're going to put these right sides together, and you just have to make sure that that's exactly what you have done. Otherwise there'll be tears before bedtime, because you'll have to unpick it all. So just remember, right sides together. It really makes no difference which way round you do it. But I choose to put the lining over the top of the main bag. And now I know the covers aren't in there, the clasp covers aren't in there yet, but I just want to clip this together first of all, just to see how it looks, if it fits okay, whether I need to adjust anything. And it also, it's easier for me, if once it's all clipped together, to pop the clasp cover in there. So it's just a case of matching up your side seams and using the quilt clips again, really nice and safe. So tuck your handles in, make sure you do tuck those in, otherwise you might have a little bit of a problem there. So tuck everything in. You've got the lovely two super edges going all the way around. Again, if you've got bits that don't quite meet and you haven't cut it really as well as we could do, my hand cutting is atrocious, then don't worry. As long as you give yourself a decent seam allowance, all will be fine. If you're not at all sure and you want more stability, then go around it again with a zigzag to give it more strength, if you like. So these are the handles, the clasp covers. Okay, now I'm sorry I put my bag in the way then, and you will see what I'm doing, so I'll talk your way through. So what I've done with mine is I've chosen that polka dot, and I've chosen it's actually sheeting. I do like my sheeting, to actually line that with, because you're not going to see it. So on each end I'm now going to stitch 1/4 inch. So the short ends, both ends, I'm going to stitch 1/4 inch. Okay, so you're joining those two pieces together. And you're going to do this twice, because you need one for one side and one for the other side. So again, just 1/4 inch. And then if you want to, you can trim that so it's nice and neat when you've done. And again, just that 1/4 inch seam allowance, thereabouts. Don't have to measure if you don't want to. If you've been consistent all the way through, then everything will match beautifully. And anyway, when you put your clasp in there and you've gathered it all up, nobody's going to see if you're a little bit short on your clasp cover, but it should be fine. It's all been measured beautifully for you. I'm just trimming that bit of lining away so it sits neat. So the next thing to do now is to actually, once you've done both, you need to turn them right side out and give them a really good press on the ends, and you will see this a little bit clearer in a second. My director, John, didn't tell me my bag was in the way, but you will see it, I promise you, a little bit more clearly in a second. So really what you want to do now is to press those ends really nice and neatly, because those are the ends that your clasp cover is going to be pushed through. There we go, now she's got it out of the way. So you need to really give this a nice good press on the ends there. And make sure that perhaps you're seeing more of the blue on the white side than you are the other way round. Because this is such a contrast, this is where you might be better off using the same fabric. I don't want that white fabric to be seen at the ends of my covers, my little channels there. Now I'm pressing my covers in half. Now you won't see that press line when you've actually ruffled this the clasp cover in there, I promise you won't. And actually another way of doing this is machining from top to bottom on all those 4 layers to hold them in place, not 1/4 of an inch and maybe 1/8 of an inch in from the edge. Do a zigzag and then you know you're going to get all the edges together. And that just holds all those 4 layers in place when you actually pop it inside your bag. And you know, we're always wiser in hindsight, and that would be actually a really good thing to do. So I've pressed it and that does hold it together fairly well. But like I say, once you fold those in half lengthwise, it's not a bad idea, perhaps, like I say, just to top stitch. So you see I'm folding it over lengthwise now. See all the raw edges there? Maybe it would be a good idea just to do a little zigzag, just to hold them in place. Because you're going to now sandwich that between the lining and the main fabric of your bag. So if they're all stitched, it just makes it super easy. And again, I'm just checking to make sure I'm seeing a little bit of the blue there, and that's because I've used the white lining. If I'd used the same dotty fabric, I didn't have enough, I only had a fat 1/4 and I really didn't have enough. So now what we're doing is, so I've brought the bag in, so you can see I've kept the clips there just to keep it all together. So now I'm taking the clip off, and where the seam is, I'm now popping my casing in there. My clasp cover is going in there. And it's the little ends, the folded ends, where we've just been ironing, those are butted up to the seam, so they're running along the seam. So when you put the next one in, they actually butt up together. So you've got a continuous, almost like a continuous casing, except the 2 ends are open. So all I'm doing now is popping that casing in between the layers of my fabric, so between the main fabric and the lining fabric, and that's just popping in there. And all I'm doing is holding that down with my clips. And you can see a little bit of the lining fabric sticking out there, that's fine. It's only because that hasn't gone, the fold hasn't gone all the way in to the casing, but I know that's wide enough to take the clasp. I've made a few of these now, so that's no bother at all to me. So again, I'm just butting that open end of the casing up to the seam allowance on both sides, which means when I put the second one in there, it actually, they touch, but obviously you've still got the opening ready for the clasp to go in, the metal handle. So there we go. So now I'm just popping my fingers in there just to make sure that some of that lining fabric does go all the way to the folded part of the cover, and just clipping those together in place so everything is nice and neat and easy. And like I say, the clips are so much nicer and user friendly than the pins. So you can see now I'm just going to machine from seam to seam. Now if you wanted to, just to save a bit of time, or you know, you feel that you're okay to do this, put the other one in the other side. I've just done one at a time, but it's entirely up to you. If you feel that you can do both together, then that's fab. And like I say, it does save a bit of time. So now we've done one, I shall trim that little bit of fabric away so it's a little bit neat. Not that we're going to see it, but it just pleases me to keep it neat. And so once that's neatened, all we're going to do then is pop the other half, because you don't forget we've made 2. You can see it just lying there by my left arm. We're going to put the other one in the other half, so just turning that around, and again just butting that right up to that seam. We've already got one in place now, so it's easy now to butt the 2 ends up together and make that nice and neat. Now if you find, because of your stitching, that they don't butt up close together, you know what, I really wouldn't worry about that, because once you've gathered up your fabric into your clasp itself, you don't see that, really you don't, and it's tucked inside the actual design of the bag. Somebody would have to take it apart to actually see if you're 1/4 of an inch out there. So that's the lovely thing about it. This is perfect for a beginner. So here we go, so just butting up the other side again, getting all my edges straight and keeping everything under control. Again, making sure that my long edges meet nicely and my short little edges with the folders and the little seam allowance there is all very neat and tidy. And again, we're just clipping those together to make that lovely, lovely finish. And again, don't worry too much about your seam allowance. 1/4 of an inch is perfect. But if you go a little bit more than that, then don't worry, because that clasp will still go through, unless you do 1/2 an inch. 1/2 an inch would be too much, but just over 1/4 of an inch is fine. And if it doesn't quite go through, if you have been too generous with your seaming, it's not too much to undo, is it? So now all we're going to do is just machine along that edge there, so right to the end where the seam is, to catch those gorgeous little covers in there, nice and neat and tidy. And again, you could go over the seam that you've just previously done. You can see I've gone a bit wonky there, but that's okay, we're not going to see any of that. And as long as we've caught a good piece of the fabric in there, then it's fine, it's really fine, and you're not going to see it. It's not going to spoil anything. So there we are, but there's no opening. Now, what I suggest you do is open up that bottom seam of your lining. I'm finger pressing it, saves me getting my iron out and wasting even more time. So open up that bottom seam of your lining and give it a good press. Give it a good press with your iron, because that gives you 2 lovely folded edges to top stitch together when you turn this through. So now all I'm going to do is get my scissors and just make a little snip. Smaller scissors would have been better, didn't have them handy, so there we go. So I'm just opening up the stitches then. I'm making a gap of about, I suppose it's about 4 inches, I haven't measured it, but it's about 4 inches, maybe 4.5. It's whatever is comfortable for you for turning that bag inside out and right side round. So assuming that we've pressed that, you're going to have 2 lovely edges there, and I'll show you how that works in a sec. So now we're just turning the whole bag inside out, and this is where it really comes to life and you see what a fab job you've made, and the satisfaction is immense. So again, just popping that fabric inside, the lining fabric, so vibrant, isn't it, that gorgeous red, goes really well with the denim. Pushing that inside. Now this is a really good time to give all that top a really good press, but again, just to save a bit of time, I haven't done that. So look at that lining now. So where we undid it, just pull that together and get those 1/4 of an inch seam allowance together nice and neatly. This is going to be at the bottom of the inside of your bag. So although I'm using white thread, I wouldn't worry about that. Nobody's going to see it except you. And this is stitched together. Now if you're going to give this as a gift, then maybe hand stitching would be a good idea, just to slip stitch those pieces together again, so it's nice and neat. Or obviously use the proper coloured thread, nice red thread, and just do a top stitch again. But that's going to go inside your bag right at the bottom, and only you will know it's there. So you can see, look, now the clasp covers are looking really gorgeous. You can see the folded ends there where we've matched those seams up against the side seam, and that's where the clasp is going to go in. So there we are. So here's the clasp. How exciting. So clear the decks. Now you do need a pair of long nose pliers. I found this to be invaluable. If you can get a pair that's nice and small at the end, perfect. So all I'm doing now is I'm getting the pliers and I'm putting them straight onto the side of the clasp. Now this is on the inside of the clasp. I've just pushed that little clip out with the flat end of the pliers, and all I'm doing now is grabbing hold of the top of the clasp there, and I'm going to pull it out. Now it might take you a minute just to pull that out. It's super tight, that's what it's meant to be. So just keep wriggling, wriggle, 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 and that will come out. You'll mainly find how you're sitting will help. Have this more in front of you. I was standing up, so it's always a little bit more difficult to show. But there's the pin. Whoops, we must keep it in place, we must keep it so we can see it. We don't want to lose that bit. Now I've only opened one end. Now a lovely lady called, I think it was Denise, said to me, you know what, you only need to open one end of those clasps, they'll go in. Well, what a revelation that was. So I've only opened one end. So now you can see how that will open up and fit into the casings. So you can see how I'm going to put that into the case. And I have to really think about these things to make sure I'm doing it right. So I'm going to thread those ends in. I've opened up one so I can get one in, and then I have to close it then to get the other one in, otherwise it just wouldn't meet. But it works, an absolute treat. So you can see I'm just pushing that tubing along that we've just made, pop that through and just easing both of those tubes onto my clasp there. And it's just so satisfying to push that through right to the other end. And because there's no seaming there, they just push through with just no bother at all. Now I like to get the fabric really well out of the way of the end that I want to put the clip back into, the little rivet. So I'm pushing these right out of the way, and plus you can see it better. So I'm doing this. You may not need to do as much pulling back as I'm doing, but I want you to see as much as I can, and so it makes it easy for you. So I'm pulling those right out of the way. There we go, nice and clear. Now here we go. You need to get the clasp absolutely back in position as it was before. Now on the inside of that little clasp there's more of a dull silver where the rivets go in, so about ½ an inch along. I'm going to show you now. So you see those two ends of dark silver, not dark silver, lighter silver, dull silver, get those absolutely parallel, okay, and then your clip will go in. And then I'm doing this at the most peculiar angle, and of course it falls out straight away. But you need to pop that in. Now just get your pliers and pop. Did you see that go in? So you do see the top part of that clasp there. You just pinch that top part, not the middle. The middle is where the spring is. And then what we do is you wriggle that bottom bit. So you're pinching that bottom bit together, and you're pushing that pin in. Now you can see I'm doing this at the most peculiar angle, but it goes in a treat. So the long nose pliers on the top there, and then on the bottom. So the top one will push it through down to the middle, and then the bottom one pushing it. When you push it together, the pin will go all the way through, and it really is very easy. I'm not the strongest of people. I didn't need to have an ology in strength to get that done. So there we are, there's the finished bag. I think it's just absolutely gorgeous. I've used denim fabric. You can use whatever fabric you like, and even though we threaded it in one side, the mechanism, that works perfectly fine, and we've got a fabulous lining inside too. It's absolutely beautiful. So I hope you enjoy making it. I hope there was enough angle shots so you could see everything being done, but I think you'll agree that's a lovely, lovely bag, and do you know what? I'm going to be using this tomorrow. So have a lovely stitchy day, and if you've got any questions at all, just come back to me and I'll do my very best to answer them for you. Bye!